I don't know. He's TheCrydd. But going on, Warlock. Eldar on Space Marines. This is Lugganath Glacier, by the way. This is an Elite Mod exclusive map, a brand new map that's recently come into circulation, and we've been trying to highlight it a little bit. So, Apothecary. And we got no game sound. Where is our game sound? It was just a little low. I need to change. Hold on. I've casted before. We're gonna lower. There we go. Toilailee as the Apothecary, TheCrydd as the Warlock. Let's take a look at this map real quick. So on the opposing victory points, we have 2 victory points on the western side with a wall and power on the opposing side. For those of you not familiar with this map, then on the far west we've got some more resource points, power and requisition, and then on the far east we have up on a raised platform the contested victory point with some requisition way out on the front. So power is actually very close to the main base. It's actually just out of range of the main base turrets, so getting some gen bashes in could be tricky, but it is a very spread out map. So far we've got scouts, we've got tanks, we've got banshees all coming out. We have Apothecary, scouts, all just grabbing forward parts of the map. The tax went straight into the center of the map to try to grab this contested requisition, maybe build that up a little bit nice and early on. Perhaps he's going for some Assault Space Marines, which is fairly typical for the Apothecary against an Eldar matchup. Of course, the Warlock himself is probably one of the best suited heroes for dealing with Assault Space Marines, as he can get that Merciless Witchblade, drain energy, and deny their second assault jump. But as it stands right now, Warlock chopping up some scouts, knocking them all over the place with his combat leap, and then a nice special attack right there. But they're just going to kite him around a little bit and buy some time. And this is exactly the engagement you don't want to have early on with your Banshees, as TheCrydd walks into those scouts, tax, and Apothecary. Banshees unupgraded, Dire Avengers unupgraded. They just can't deal with that initial bulk of the Space Marines, especially with the help of the Apothecary. Even if he didn't have the shotguns upgraded right there, if the Tactical Marines and Scouts get a full volley of fire on those approaching Banshees and then get into melee, the Tacs will actually win the melee fight if they get a heal from the Apothecary and the Banshees don't get back-to-back specials non-stop. Banshees do have high melee skill though, so it is fairly common for that to happen, but already getting forced off the map, nearly losing his first generator, and here come the Banshees again, but that shotgun blast is going to be a simple denial. TheCrydd really is using his Warlock to kind of harass the map right now, but I think when you're playing against the Apothecary, you need that Warlock in here as a solid, non-bleeding resource against these Tactical Marines. He's already bled a lot of Banshees, a lot of Dire Avengers, and it's looking a bit tricky right out of the gate for Mr. TheCrydd over here. Warlock finding himself able to keep this side of the map decapped, and he does have the victory points at the moment. He is a 2-0 cap right now, but Toilailee does not even care. He's just going straight for the power. He says, you can take the early VPs. If I get the tech advantage, it's not going to matter in the late game. So, despite being at an almost 100 victory point disadvantage so far, looking pretty good on map control. He's kind of all locked in here against these Banshees. Apothecary now moving in, does have plenty of energy for another full heal on those Tactical Marines. Banshees realizing that's the threat. Apothecary might go down here. He can't retreat. Even if he had retreated right there, the Banshees would have ripped him apart. Although those Banshees probably don't want to mess with these Tacs much longer. Although with both of those Dire Avenger squads hanging out, he does manage a sudden swing in the favor, which was such a solid set of engagements early on there for Toilailee, suddenly taking a harsh turn for the worse there. He was behind in map control, but ahead on tech and power, but now losing his Apothecary and 2 tactical model squads right there. That's a sudden over 300 requisition just down the drain. Meanwhile, TheCrydd has over here, you can see, built up a second generator, and suddenly looking very favorable for the Warlock in return. There are a couple generators down here. Assault Marines will be hitting the field momentarily, but down by almost 150 VPs. Looking a bit tricky now for Toilailee. He has no requisition to speak of, so his Apothecary won't be out here to support the ASM. So if TheCrydd decides to really gather up his army here and take the Space Marines head on, I think with the Banshees and the Warlock, he should be able to tear this apart pretty easily. That power melee on the Banshee squads, of course, can rip through the mainstay of Toilailee's forces without that Apothecary on the field to give him any heals and that potential support of purification rites or vials or any sort of disruption on those Banshees. I don't know where the Banshees just were. Were they chasing? I guess they were trying to get on those generators. I think actually a downside of this map is those generators fall a bit too close. You can't even, the Banshees can't even get into melee with these generators without being in the firing arc of that base turret. So I think that power might need to get moved a bit further out, because I think that's what happens. The Banshees were trying to gen bash and they could not do so because of those base turrets taking some heavy fire there. Scouts, these shotgun scouts just blasting away over here. Managed to take out one generator. Finally going to get this power node here. They must have been carrying a lot of shells in their pockets to pull that off. I don't know how many shotgun shell scouts get requisitioned for a mission, but it must have been a lot. As it stands right now, 500 to 322. Eldar just kind of rallying on the back line here. He's been playing very spread out for the time being, and unfortunately that's not quite been working out for him. He went tier 2 very early as opposed to getting something like the Shuriken Cannon, which is practically a staple of tier 1 builds for Eldar in one-on-one matches, and we can see right now that he just doesn't have the control he needs to deal with this brute force Space Marine army. Apothecary already upgraded with a Sanguine Chainsword, so he's going to be a little bit more bulky on the field. He'll be able to heal himself up a little bit and do a bit more damage. But as it stands right now, Eldar player is losing all his power, so he's going to be heading into tier 2, but if he loses all these gens right now, he's really not going to have a lot of power to play with. And as I mentioned, it's generally better to just get that kind of mid-tier, as most players refer to it, tier 1.5 units on the field, those power-reliant units in the kind of mid-game of tier 1. But anyways, still playing very around the map right now. TheCrydd is he's got a warp gate now up on the far side, one in his base as well, so he can easily hop over and defend that potential gen farm that he's going to be putting up over there, as he's been having a heck of a time of holding his natural one in the center of the map. Does manage to keep those VPs ticking away. Toilailee is heading into tier 2. TheCrydd has very little power now. He, I think, chose to get some upgrades potentially for his Banshee or Warlock. He does have the Merciless Witchblade now on that Warlock. So again, another power-intensive purchase that he purchased after, I'm pretty sure, he went into tier 2. And now that he's sitting in tier 2, Toilailee will be hitting tier 2 later, but he's actually going to have the power to support it. Whereas sometimes, I mean, it just proves you don't necessarily want to hit that tech button as soon as you possibly can. Double shotgun scouts now here in the center, haranguing these Banshees. Banshees taking some fire, but it looks like both shotgun shells have been exhausted and are now getting chased down by those Banshees. Forced off both the scouts, but the Banshees won't be able to pursue any further as the Tax and Assault Marines are on this western point. Apothecary now grouping up. Toilailee's been doing a good job of spreading out, grabbing map where he can, and then consolidating his forces to take on the Eldar head-to-head. Banshees are upgraded now with their Aspect of Fleetness and their Banshee Exarch, so they will be very nasty. They can hop over cover. They've got all that power melee that does crazy damage, slices right through that Space Marine power armor. Dire Avengers relentlessly pushing this side of the map, though, keeping those VPs down as much as possible. Toilailee now down by 200 victory points, which is nothing to scoff at, but we'll have to see. It's going into tier 2 now, and as we said, despite getting to tier 2 much later, Toilailee is going to be the first one with a tier 2 unit on the field. He's bringing the Razorback out here. TheCrydd has nothing he can do about that. As soon as he sees that, he's going to have to get himself a Bright Lance, some Fire Dragons, any sort of anti-vehicle to keep that Razorback from running the field. That Razorback can bleed Eldar so quickly with all their light infantry. That heavy bolter on top does such great damage against base infantry damage. Or base infantry armor, rather. Damage to armor, that's how the game works. Apothecary now hunting down this Warlock. Warlock's going to try to get a few hits, maybe to just get some energy off of that Apothecary, but he has to be careful because that Sanguine Chainsword does do some reasonable damage. And yeah, if the Apothecary had gotten one more swing right there, it would have been pretty dicey. Apothecary does have to fall back. He was kind of hoping for that Razorback to save him, but it looks like he might not be getting home. 15 HP left. The Banshee just need one more swing, but the base turrets cover him, just barely allowing him to retreat back to base safely. One more swing and the Apothecary would have fallen again, and now a triple cap against the TheCrydd. And these Dire Avengers won't be able to do much other than get a decap and run away. Razorback is going to rip them apart. TheCrydd sitting with tons of requisition. He needs to get something else out on the field. I think, oh, he's just holding out for Wraithlord. And sure, the Wraithlord will be great, but it might be a bit late right now, considering the map situation. Losing a few more Dire Avengers on the back end, not super concerning at this point, but if he continues to bleed like that, it's really going to start adding up. We can see he's sitting at under 200 requisition now, so he will be able to get the Wraithlord on the field, but any additional upgrade squads are going to be a ways off. Like, he doesn't have his Dire Avengers upgraded at all. These are completely vanilla, and you're really in Tier 2 going to be wanting to get that battle equipment, get that Exarch on the field, really toughen them up, give them abilities like grenades and that sort of thing. Grenades can be so useful against things like Assault Space Marines and, of course, the Tacticals, which don't move that quickly, and the Assaults kind of have a way of jumping in on their enemies that if you can predict correctly with grenades, you can really take large chunks of HP off of this otherwise very beefy squad. Wraithlord comes out, and Apothecary, despite trying to get in the face of those Banshees, really can't do much about that, so he immediately decides to fall back. Looks like the scouts with their sergeants spotted that warp gate, which I think Toilailee recognized was somewhere out on this side of the map, so he's happy to be rid of that. Those warp gates can be a huge pain, and now the map has just gradually been turning more and more red, and the VP lead is closing. The gap is now down to about 100 victory points. Suddenly turn around, and that's what I was talking about. Toilailee was not overly concerned, I think, early game, losing those victory points because he knew he had the tech advantage. He knew overall the resources were more in his control than not. Now just using a single squad to cap on the back end with those Dire Avengers. Melt-A-Bomb goes down on top of this Wraithlord, so it will be held down for a little bit. Warlock getting in on those scouts, ripping them apart with that Merciless Witchblade. Rockets now on the Tactical Marines as well, but I don't think this is enough anti-vehicle to deal with this Wraithlord, and it looks like Toilailee's going to have no choice but to fall back. He will, unfortunately, for TheCrydd, be able to push off those Banshees. The Banshees were a little too brazen. The Dire Avengers go down as well, taking a lot of focus fire from these fully upgraded Space Marine squads. Assault Space Marine falls, a small moral victory there for the Eldar forces, but even so, this Wraithlord just isn't going to be able to deal with the attacks inside of this Razorback. They're just going to be able to hop in and out and then ping rockets into that force over and over again. Apothecary is just going to try to hang out and tank against this Wraithlord. Banshee's moving back in. Perhaps Toilailee's being a bit too brazen, but if it pays off, he's going to get a Walker kill and probably just about close out the game. Sync kill going down on that Apothecary. Bought a little bit of defense there for the Wraithlord. But unfortunately, I think Toilailee was just a bit too brazen there, hoping to get that kill. Warlock does have to fall back. Wraithlord can't stop the decap, but he did manage to take out the Apothecary. But Toilailee doesn't seem like he's overly concerned. He's got so much requisition right now. He has been barely bleeding at all, as opposed to TheCrydd, who has now lost both of his Dire Avenger squads. Wraithlord is about all he's got on the field, along with those Banshees, but he can't even repair that injured thing. And I think TheCrydd's going to be hard-pressed to get back into this game, especially if the Warlock goes down here. He's got so little HP. And TheCrydd decides, go ahead, call the GG, gather himself, and he's going to bring it back for Game 2. One win for Mr. Toilailee in the first round of 16 match here in Monthly Rumble number 20. We've been doing these for, man, almost 2 years now. Probably over 2 years, honestly, because I don't think we've done one every